Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about the benefits of reading. This is something that had me intrigued. I actually watched several YouTube videos and read some articles on this topic because reading was always a part of my life. Growing up, I always thought of it as a pastime and I never really understood that it actually has some specific benefits to it. So I was interested to find out more. So the first benefit of reading that I found out about is stress reduction. There was a 2009 study by the University of Sussex that found that reading for 6 minutes can reduce stress as much as 68%. And for reference, they mentioned that music reduces stress by 61% and going for a walk by 42%. So actually reading is the top activity for that. And I was blown away because I think it always did that for me, but I never really noticed it. Growing up, there were times in my life that were really difficult, and I think that reading was a very important escape for me. And I think it did achieve a stress reduction in my life, but I never really thought about it and I never noticed it. So that was eye-opening for me. So in their article, the researchers mentioned that they believe the stress reduction is because the brain has to focus its attention on what you're reading, and somehow that takes the brain away from anxious and stressful thinking, and it achieves a reduction in your heart rate and your muscle tension. I will leave the reference in the description box. The second benefit of reading is that it transports us into someone else's reality. And this is where it gets interesting. There's a concept called deictic shift theory, DST. This was developed by a researcher by the name of Erwin Segal in 1995 at the University of Buffalo. And basically, the word deictic, which I was not familiar with, actually means a word that can have different meanings depending on the context. So the word you is on that list because if you say, I love you, or I believe you, that you means a different person if you're talking to somebody else. Another word would be here, I'm here, right? So depending on where you are, that could mean I'm here in London or I'm here in the US, right? So all these words are considered deictic. And so the deictic shift means that as you're reading the book, let's say it's narrated in the first person, then all of a sudden you are becoming that person. So now the I is shifting. Your I that you usually use to describe yourself is now the I of the narrator. And so there's a way that your brain transports itself. So that's called deictic shift theory. And so there's been some research on this, and what they found is that as you're reading, you actually transport yourself to the point that the experience of the character you're reading about is now your experience. So that's a very powerful shift. So this was confirmed by some studies with functional MRIs that were presented in the TED Talk titled How Literature Can Help Us Develop Empathy by Beth Ann Fennelly. So she showed some brain pictures where you see the motor cortex lighting up in areas that have to do with what's in the book. So, for example, if a character is running through a forest in the book and you're reading about it, your neurons that would usually light up when you're running, those actually light up. So you're literally transporting yourself into the story on a functional MRI level. Like literally your brain is lighting up in those areas as if you were that character. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute. That's pretty insane. Another example she had was the olfactory area, the area where you process smells, lights up if you're reading a passage where the character is noticing a smell and having some emotional reaction to it. So that was interesting. Now, the third benefit of reading is that books make us grow. For this one, I would refer you to a 2009 University of Toronto study, and the title of the study was On Being Moved by Art. and I'll leave the reference below as well. So basically they took 166 first-year undergrads with a mean age of 19.5 years. It was 112 females and 54 males, and they split them into two groups. So they read a short story by Chekhov, but one group read the actual short story with the prose and the fiction and the descriptions of the characters by Anton Chekhov. And the other group read the same story, but in documentary form, where it just tells you what happened, kind of a flat documentary style without the beauty of the writing and the in-depth description of the characters' emotions. Now, the results of the study showed that when they asked people to describe their personality traits before and after, the group that read the actual short story by Anton Chekhov, which, by the way, I've read that story, and it does trigger your emotions. So the group that read that story was the group that showed a shift in their own perception of their own personality traits. So one of the things about the results of the study that I thought was interesting is that it's not a predictable thing. So in other words, you can't say, okay, I'm going to make you read this story and then it's going to make you more this way or that way, right? What they found was that no particular trait was changed for all individuals, but rather each individual had unique changes across all 5 traits. And so to me, that was fascinating because as I have discussions with other readers about reading the same book, I have found that even though two people can be very moved by the same book, they can be moved in completely different ways because the book is read in the context of the person's personal experiences. And so the person receives different takeaways and different emotions based on their own experiences as well. So it's a complex interaction. I just want to read you part of the discussion from that University of Toronto study. It says, "It is not our argument that art necessarily causes permanent or strong personality changes in those who encounter it. A relationship of an individual psyche to a work of art is a highly complex process that cannot be easily brought into laboratory. Instead, this study shows that the potential for change is there, given that the human psyche appears to respond to the artistic form through subtle shifts in the vision of itself. This potential is worth exploring." So that's it, guys. I was fascinated with what I watched and what I read. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. We are just starting to realize how powerful reading is and how important reading is in shaping who we are. I wonder what your experiences have been like. Have you ever read a book and then felt like you are not quite the same after you read it compared to before? I would love to hear anything you can share in the comments about that. I feel a little bit more illuminated since I've read these studies and since I've watched that TED Talk, and hopefully I was able to pique your curiosity today so that you can explore this topic for yourself and find out just how much reading can change your life. Till next time, happy reading!